Greetings. My name is Wataru Nishida. I'm one of the counselors from counseling department. Welcome to Effective Note-Taking Workshop. So I am going to record my presentation today, and for those of you who could not attend it, you can watch this recorded session. Let's get started. Okay, so effective note-taking. So one of my goals today is to share with you some of my feedback, some knowledge, some sharing studies about what can we do so we can achieve better grade, basically. Note-taking is one of the tools we can use to access your better academic outcome. So I don't want you to think that this is the only way to improve your academia. However, note-taking is one of the critical components to be able to maintain your high standard of your academic results. So today you're going to learn about, is my note-taking reflecting my learning style? For those of you who don't know, there are different learning styles. I am basically, for example, visual and auditory learner. I like to see what's going on. I like to hear. So that way I am able to process new coming information much faster. For some of you are really good with reading. Some of you are good with interacting with other people, which make you more processing data effectively. So first, we're going to talk about that and what that means for you in terms of note-taking. What can I do so that my note-take can make more sense to me? That's kind of related to that first statement, that once you know what your learning style is, then we can find out what are the any changes we can make. So when I look at my note, it makes sense to me much better. Okay, and how can I apply my notes to get A? So then at the end we'll talk about, so how can we use this note to get A? Okay, so those are the three main topics we're going to be talking about throughout this workshop. Let's go back there. Sorry about that. There we go. So back first, so why do we need to take a note? Let's revisit that purpose, because we all do, just because that's what you're being told to do. Basically, when you go to class, you take a notes. But we need to find out why we are doing it. Sometimes when we don't know the reason why, we don't really get that effectiveness out of what you do, right? So let's think about, so what happens if you don't take a notes, right? Well, if you don't take a notes, then you won't retain new information that you hear from a lecture or through your online courses. In your case, it might be through your assignments. Okay, we'll talk more about that later. What is your purpose of taking notes? Well, to retain information, but also this directly correlates to what kind of grade you're going to get. Because basically these notes help you to retain information, also to regurgitate all the information you need, get the grade you want. So the note-taking can be the cornerstone for you. Okay. Is your note-taking achieving your goal? Okay. If not, what can you change so that your note-taking is helping you to achieve your goal? Okay, so all of these are kind of questions to think about before we get in there. Let's then talk about memory. Okay, the studies shows 50% of a lecture will be lost within 24 hours. 50%. That's more than I thought, but that's what the study shows, right? And 80% in 2 weeks and 95% within 1 month. If you are not actively filling in blank your notes. You can think about what that might be. Well, study or review your notes, right? So we'll talk about memory in terms of, so the note will help you to revisit the information that you just learned in that particular lecture. Based on how much you study what you've taken on the notes will help you to retain information, When I say retain information, what I mean by that is this. In our brain, we have a two parts, two types of memory we have in our brain, right? One is long-term memory, one is short-term memory. Okay. Any of the information you retain in a long-term memory, that information you don't have to put so much effort into recalling what had happened because it's there and it will more likely stay there for a long time. That's why it's called long-term memory. Well, as you can imagine, when you hear a lecture, when you are gathering new knowledge, information into your brain, the first obviously goes to short-term memory um, container, if I may say. So the question is, what can you do so that these information that are in short-term memory container can move to long-term memory container? That's the question, right? That's the magic question. Well, as I was telling you about the question of if you are not actively rehearsing or studying your notes, that's what it means. That's what exactly help you to move the short-term memory material into long-term memory. Rehearsing your new information is the key. So, and not only rehearsing many times, but rehearsing effectively, right? So that when you rehearse, revisit an information, your brain is processing the information effectively so that understanding of new information would have a strong association in your brain. Therefore, faster the pace, you will be able to move those information to long-term memory. We'll talk more about that. So that's where the note-taking skill come into play. Okay, we'll talk more about that. So what can we do to improve our note-taking skill, right? That's the question. But first, like I said before, let's talk about your different learning style. We need to know what that is, right? So I'm just giving you seven categorization of learning style. And let's kind of go over briefly, okay? The first one, the visual, prefer using pictures and images, right? Auditory, prefer using sound and music. Verbal, prefer using words both in speech and writing. Physical, prefer using your body, touch, and senses. Logical, prefer using logics, reasoning, and systems. And social, prefer to learn in groups or with other people. Solitary, some people are just good with learning by themselves. Okay. So these are some categorization, and I don't want you to think that you're going to have only one. Okay. More likely than not, we have a 2 or 3 out of these category that using your preference to process your data. Okay. So let's talk a little more one by one and see what they are looking like. So visual learner first. Use of color, layout, and spatial organization is going to be the key when you're writing down new information when you're attending a class, okay? Use your mind maps. So these people who are visual learner may have a strong imagination skill. They can organize and see things based on a spatial organization, but also color is so important to them. Sometimes you can use a story technique. These people have a great imagination, so you can come up with some story to fit in this new terminology or the definition of this terminology. So these are some skills you can use. Now, let me give you some examples, some notes for visual learners. See this? How different it is, so colorful, and it's so symbolic. When you look at these each words and color and symbols, is it making sense for this person who written this down, right? So the key is when you revisit your note, if it makes sense to you, that's all matter. Doesn't matter if your friends, your parents, or your teacher even have to make sense out of the notes. If you can, recall it and looking at it and making sense out of new information. That's all it cares. Okay. In fact, that is the key to success, right? We all need to find out our own equation for successful outcome, right? We all need to find out the way in which you can prepare for exam, the way in which you prepare how to write your essay, and way in which how you write your notes. And you should have your own unique way to retain new information, understand it all, and also to retrieve those information for the sake of exams or class discussion or writing a paper. Auditory, right? Use sounds, obviously, rhyme and music in your learning. Do you remember sometime, when you recall old music, as long as the melody is there, all the lyrics, always come back to your mind, right? It doesn't need to think. Well, that's the power of music and sound. All of the sudden, when you have a melody with it, and or the lingo and the word come back to you. So if you are a musician, for the matter, use sounds. You can even come up with a new song to talk about different terminologies. Like for example, I know I have a student who are at a health field going for a nursing program or a resp care or dental hygienist. I know they all have to take a biology 109, 110. As you know, they are anatomy and physiology class, and you have to memorize all the bone and muscular structure from head to toe. That's a lot of memorization. I said, if you love music, use sound, create some music that has each name body parts. I know for some other people to hear you sing in that way, it might sound strange. Again, it doesn't matter. If that helps you learn, if it helps you to process information, do that. Okay. Sometimes you can use the music to motivate yourself. Um, and also music have a healing quality, not only to talk about your academic side. I know during pandemic, use of music can be so effective when you are stressed out, when you need to relax, take a bath with slow, nice, relaxing music, with candles, with a nice smell. All of these things you can do to relax your body, your mind, because as we know, we need to do that from time to time to balance our psyche. In my actually Tai Chi breathing workshop and stress and anxiety workshop, I talk about during pandemic, we feel that things are out of control, as we all know. We don't know when it's going to finish, how the economy is going to impact you, even your job. We as a human being need to have a sense of control so that we can maintain mental health. Okay. So we have to actively engage in new activity, such as take some moment to relax yourself, take some moment to go outside and take a walk, start some new exercise, start intentionally eating healthy food. Um, so we need to proactively do things to regain a sense of control. If you let this out of control phenomena takes you over, that's when you find yourself depressed. That's when you find yourself not motivated to do anything at all. So we have to be proactively engaging what seems to be a challenging thing, but that's what we are called upon to do. That is what we need to do to maintain our mental health. And again, the music can help you in a great deal. For those of you who do yoga, music can really help you to go into the mode of relaxation, introspection, meditation. Again, use of music is effective. Verbal. For those of you who likes to use word, okay, who likes to engage in discussion, things like that, right? Find ways to incorporate more speaking and writing techniques. So for example, talk yourself while you are taking notes or use recordings of your content for repetition. I remember when I was in college, when I have to memorize an enormous amount of new information, I would write down on a piece of paper while I am speaking out loud what I'm writing down. So that sometimes help you because you're writing, right? That's one. You're looking at what you're writing. That's two sensation using. And then you're hearing what you are saying, and then you're saying it. So there are four senses you're using in one movement to be able to repeat, right? So four times in one movement. So that's one of the technique that a lot of people might find yourself use to memorize effectively. If you are like a verbal kind of person, you can use that. The other thing is we are online now, so you don't have to worry about, speaking out loud while you're trying to memorize. Like when you're in library, you can't do that. But here, you're by yourself at home, you might be able to do that. And the other thing we recommend, try to work with others through Zoom or FaceTime, do role play, do some kind of negotiation, right? Discussion. And these will help you to stick in your brain, right? More association you can make with the new information is better for you to recall what you are talking about. Okay. Physical learner. So those of you who need to get involved in physically, you might be a dancer, you might be the theater major. For those of you who needs to be touchy, something on, engineering major. All of these people who needs to have something in your hand, right? Uh, or physically get involved in learning process. Maybe you as you recall new information, you can dance. Who knows, right? To the music, or you might study while you're walking, right, in earphone. Or all of these are again different techniques you can use based on what learning style you may have. Okay. Logical person. Apply reasoning, right, behind your content, understand material, having detailed understanding behind your compulsory content helps you memorize, explore the links between various systems, and note them down. So you look these people looking for reasoning why, logical reasoning why the way it is, right? And the study shows actually instead of trying to look for the rational logical reasoning behind it. More irrational, illogical that can be like a silly way. It will stick with the brain. Okay, so so that's another technique you can use to be able to recall information. Okay? Social learner. This is something that I kind of take a moment to explain to our students too. When I was coming up back in college, I used to have like a study group. I would go from library to library, or from somebody's house to house to kind of study together. I know now these days it's not really common practice, as I understand, rightly so, because I think the advancement of technology, you really don't need to ask for help now these days, because click a button, you should be able to find the answer for it, right? So I think in your generations are less likely to seek out help, less likely to study together, and less likely to engage in some kind of a social activity to study together. But I'm recommending that for that reason too. Why? Because one, when you graduate from college, when you obtain degree, when you're working for corporation or healthcare setting or school setting, it's all same. We have to work as a team. You cannot avoid that unless you're working IT department where you're faced with computer to create, I don't know, web page or whatever, right? That's a little bit different story. But even then, you are assigned in a team and then trying to work it together. The communication skill, socialization skill, it's going to be the crucial key for you to be successful in wherever you choose to go. So for that reason too, I recommend forming a study group I recommend, I challenge you to study together. In fact, I remember one of the most effective way to learn for me at the time when I was back in college was to teach my other group member. So for example, we have, I don't know, 1 through 5 chapters to study for a test, and we each assigned each chapter to study about. And then you are asked to teach to rest of the small group member as to what important parts are for the each chapter. So while you're studying, knowing that you have to teach, it'll all of a sudden change how you study, right? Because you not only just simply memorizing the new concept, you have to understand deeper and what it is, why it is, because they might ask you a question, right? So in fact, the person that the learning the best or throughout the lecture is the teacher. While you're teaching, they are the one learning the best actually. Okay. So this technique, I think it works very effectively when you are teaching, like you just do role play. You're a teacher, you're a professor. You're teaching. Maybe you can teach to your partner, your spouse, or um, your children. That can be another technique you can use. Okay. Solitary learner. This is the last one. So they are the one that who rather learn by themselves, align your goals and objectives with your personal beliefs and values, create a personal interest in the subject that you are learning about, and you drive yourself by the way you see yourself internally. So these people are more, independent, autonomous, basically kind of self-help kind of learner. But they're saying that more what you're studying about is coinciding with your values, your academic goal, your career goal. If you know what you're taking this class for is one step closer to your goal, will drive you more to study, right, effectively. And so these are the important component for solitary learner. So these are some examples. Like I said, you might be finding yourself couple of learning style, right? Like I said before, I am a visual learner and auditory learner, and I'm actually social learner as well. So I try to combine those three things as much as I can while I'm preparing for the test. Exactly, especially when I formulated study group before the exam, we'll take a turn, teach each other. We'll study, of course, we study ourselves first and then come together and teach. Um, I summarized my notes. I use different colors, spatial assignments to different concepts that help me learning. Okay. So let me give you more example of different notes, right? So as you can see, this one is kind of visual. They have a spatial organization there. Um, this one might be more logical, outlining, very simple way of displaying new information. Now, this one I want to take some time to explain. This way, what you see, what we call is a Cornell notes taking skill. So as you can see here, they have a three distinctive space, right? So to the left here is basically you want to come up with like a clue terminology or phrases, right? So on the right here is basically the basic outlining of the lecture. On the left, they give you some clues as to what are the main points of the lecture throughout that lecture. And then on the bottom here, you will have your own summarization in your own word as to what you've learned on that particular lecture. So these three spaces give you, when you're ready to study for exam, like for example, you can hide your outline and then looking at all the clue terminologies and then recall what you talked about for that particular lecture. Or you can look at the summary in your own word, what you've written down there to recall what you've talked about. what the teacher talked about on that particular lecture. So this is very handy um, spatial organization for note taking. Okay. This one's again more visual, again more symbolic, lots of pictures, but it makes sense as you can see, right? This obviously talking about global warming and environmental science class, how the earth is being destroyed. So yeah, so this is very creative. So before I talk about the last slide, I don't want you to think about, oh, this is the way I should just follow. No, you can create your own style. That's the bottom line, okay? Whatever the way makes sense for you is the way, okay? And it takes some time to come up with that style. Um, and that's why it's not that easy. But the key is to get in tune with yourself. Looking back your past, how did you retain new information? What did it help you? When you're learning something new, do you usually read it and then you can retain easily, or you have to go over a couple of times to recapture the new concept? If that is you, you're not verbal learner. The verbal learner is able to capture pretty easily by reading, but if you're not, then you might be more visual, you might be more auditory learner, you might be more social. So all of these are clue in which you can kind of narrow down what style you may have, right? So the last slide I have here is, so given the fact that now, let's say that you have effective note in front of you to study for it, here is a couple of things that I would like you to do. If you do this cycle, I'll guarantee you, your grade for the test will improve, okay? It involves repetition, as we talked about at the beginning, right? So when you look at the top first here, okay, so review your notes from previous class and know what you are going to cover for today, right? Now, after I talk about this, and I'm going to talk about pertaining to online class too, okay? So that's the first step. You want to always review before the class starts. You want to go back to the previous class, what you've learned. Take 5 minutes, okay? And then the next year, look for the main idea and the supporting idea for that particular lecture you are attending, right? So you look to here. So what are the main idea for today? What are the supporting ideas? As you are writing those information down, make sure that you understand all materials, okay? So if you were to read the chapter ahead of time, this will definitely help you to digest and understand the new material. But if, let's say, you didn't have enough time to read ahead of time, and this is brand new information to me, and as I'm listening, oh my gosh, I have no clue what he or she's talking about. Then after the lecture is done, make sure that you go to the professor, ask the question. Don't let it be in terms of, the questions not being answered and just move on to next chapter. All right. That's when a lot of people lose the connection between the chapter to chapter, or when you recall material for the upcoming test, when those questions are unanswered, you cannot recall information around that material. You see, it's like you're creating gap in your brain, right? So it's very important that all of the questions being answered and you understand it correctly. Okay. After the particular lecture is done, I would like you to take a moment to summarize what you've learned in your own word, like the Cornell notes we just talked about. On your own word. Nobody have to read it. You need to understand what you've written down, obviously. So just, write it down, one paragraph. I learned blah, 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 blah. Okay. And then take another 5 minutes after that. Review your notes as to what you've learned today. That is the cycle. If you do this, before the lecture starts, and then during the lecture, and then after the end of the lecture, review it. If you do this every time, I guarantee you, when you are ready to recall for your test, you have a much easier time and you will require less time to prepare for the test. Okay. Now, this is given the fact that this is traditional face-to-face class. Now, as we all know, that right now we are online platform, meaning most of us do not have a lecture. So, which means, so how can I summarize important parts? Because there's no lecture, and I'm just reading the chapters as syllabus say, but it's hard to narrow down what are the important material or information from the particular lecture. Well, the answer to that question is this. It's the assignments. It is all in assignments. Okay, let's imagine that you are the professor. You need to teach certain amount of materials throughout the semester. There's no lecture for you to convey what are the important informations are throughout the semester. Only way for you to tell them, I want you to learn X, Y, and Z is through the types of assignments you assign to the students, right? So in a way, the teachers are telling you through assignments, this is the material that I want you to learn. This is the material I want you to memorize. This is the material I want you to understand in logical way. So when the test comes, you can then explain what that is. So, like, imagine you're a detective, right? And you're trying to find out, okay, so what is the professor trying to tell us to learn? All right. So, instead of just trying, basically doing what syllabus asks you to do, imagine you're a detective. You are trying to find out what's going to be on the exam. Where are the important information? All right. You want to always have that eye, detective eye, right? And of course, you are free to ask question to the professor, right? And you can say, I did this X, Y, and Z assignments last week, and I'm assuming they are important. Of those assignments, I wonder if this is most important throughout the chapter. You can ask that, and he or she might say yes, right? So then you will pay more attention to the material. And when the test is there, sure enough, I'm sure those concepts and the questions are going to be there for you to address. Okay. I know that the online courses are harder to retain new information. Why? Because you're only using reading comprehension. There's no engagement taking place, like lecture, like discussion, like you're listening to what professor have to say, right? Because when you're listening also, I can, as a detective, I can see how they are delivering the message, right? If the professor choose to spend more time on one question than the other, then the chances are the question is going to be on the exam, right? And also, as you know, that is important concept for you to learn. So always maintain the detective eye, detective, way of analyzing what's going on throughout the semester. Okay, good. So thanks for paying your attention to me today throughout the workshop. If you do have any question, you can email me. I'm going to tell you my email address. I'm going to spell out W N as a Nancy, I S as a Sam, H I D as in dog, A. So WNISHIDA at ccp.edu. Okay. Thank you for participating today, and hopefully this help you improving your grade. All right. Good luck with the semester, and talk to you soon.